The finale for Daredevil Born Again just aired, so let's talk about the series as a whole, and obviously spoilers, so like this video and come back later if you have not seen any of Daredevil Born Again Series 2 and you do not want to know anything about the series. First up, if we talk about the overall storyline of this series, I really enjoyed it. I love the idea of Mayor Fisk anyway because I think it gives him a new level of power, which is very interesting to explore, and I really love seeing Fisk going after these vigilantes and basically anybody else he didn't like with the AVTF. I will say that at points it was very uncomfortable in terms of real world parallels, but I'm really glad that this show did not shy away from that because I feel like it would have been a disservice to this storyline and this show and the real world in a lot of ways if they had actually shied away from that, so I'm really glad they didn't. It made for uncomfortable viewing at times, but very important viewing, so like I said, I'm very glad that they did not shy away from that at all and actually more lent into it if anything. In terms of individual storylines, I really liked Fisk and Vanessa's storyline throughout here because obviously it was inevitable that Vanessa was going to die just because it does happen a lot in the comics. In the comics specifically, Vanessa has now died 3 times across the years and 2 times at Fisk's hand, and I'm really happy that this happened again in the TV show, only under different circumstances, because in the comics it is deliberate and Fisk kills her deliberately twice, whereas in the show it was accidental, and I really love seeing that play out for Fisk throughout this series and seeing that grief and that guilt play on him and how he then reacted to that. I thought that was all done excellently well. I really love that, and I especially actually love that flashback episode where we saw the beginning of their relationship and how they actually met and everything else. I thought that was all done excellently and really hammered home Fisk's grief even more. I thought that was all done excellently. Awards all round for everybody involved in that flashback episode specifically, and then Vincent D'Onofrio for the rest of this series as well because he did an excellent job with Fisk's grief and anger and his reaction after the loss of Vanessa. I thought that was all done excellently well. Another storyline I really loved was the return of Jessica Jones and seeing an update in her life where she is now with Luke. Obviously we don't see Luke until that final episode, but it was really nice to know that she was back with him again and she has actually had Danielle with him now, because obviously we knew that this was going to be happening eventually with their characters if they followed the comics, and it was really nice to see that finally on the big screen. I also really enjoyed as well seeing Jessica dealing with this weird power thing that's going on where it's fluctuating. I think that's going to be a very interesting storyline for her going forward that we will hopefully see maybe in their own TV show, but in the very least in Daredevil Series 3. I am really excited to see more of that and see where that is going as a storyline. I also really liked Heather's storyline throughout this series as well, even though I am not the biggest fan of Heather. I really enjoyed seeing Muse basically haunting her and seeing basically the fallout of his attack on her from last series play out throughout this one, and seeing her slowly go dark side. I thought that was all done excellently. Hands down, give all of the awards to the actress who plays Heather. She did an incredible job with that, and I am so excited to see her as Muse itself in the next series. I think that is going to be a really interesting take on the Muse idea and seeing where her character goes with it and what she does as Muse. I think that is all going to be excellent, and I love the build up for this throughout this series. I cannot wait to see where it's going to go next time. And then the final storyline we need to talk about here is Matt's storyline and the fact that everybody now knows he is Daredevil, because this is going to have massive consequences going forward for Matt as a character and everybody else around him. But before we talk about the consequences of that scene, I do want to talk about that scene in general. First of all, I am so glad it happened in a courtroom because I feel like we have not seen enough of Matt in a courtroom and being a lawyer this series or in the previous series. So I'm really glad that it actually happened there and we got to see him being a lawyer for a little while. It's something I have deeply missed over the last 2 seasons. So I was really glad that it happened there. And then second of all, I was completely and utterly convinced that it was going to be Fisk who was the one who revealed it to the world. And I also love the fact that this actually happened in the courtroom scene and nowhere else, because I think if Matt had just taken off his mask it wouldn't have been anywhere near as impactful, and the fact that Matt actually did it in the courtroom surrounded by cameras and AVTF, Fisk and judges and everything else, I thought that was excellently done. I loved it. And I especially loved how he revealed it as well, because he obviously went, "I am Daredevil." Loads of people didn't believe him, and he proved it by throwing his stick against the wall and it bounced off the walls and he caught it again. That was the perfect way to basically go, yeah, I am Daredevil, I am not lying, and I loved that. But like I said, this is going to have major consequences for Matt going forward. Obviously, the first one is that he is now in jail because obviously as Daredevil, as a vigilante, he has done a lot of bad things and is now in jail for his crimes. So that is going to be a major consequence for him. I have no idea how he's going to get busted out. I have a couple of theories which I will go into in a minute, but I am so excited to see basically him in jail and seeing how that affects him, especially as we've now seen as well that the AVTF agents are in the same jail. So I'm excited to see those interactions and see how that's going to affect him. But then also there's going to be more far-reaching consequences when he gets out of jail, because obviously Matt is not going to spend all of his time in jail and he is going to eventually get back out again, because otherwise there'd be no show. But the consequences is that he's not going to be a lawyer anymore. One, because he is Daredevil, and two, because he's been in jail. So that's going to be a very interesting thing for me, because obviously he can't be a lawyer anymore and that is a massive part of Matt. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to affect him and how that's going to affect his life and the people around him as well. That's going to be very, very interesting. But also it's going to be very interesting as well because everyone now knows, which means any other villain he goes up against is going to know exactly who he is and where he lives and the people to hurt him, things like that. That is going to be very, very dangerous for people like Karen and obviously Kristen and everybody else. We've obviously seen that this can affect people like Foggy, because Foggy is still apparently dead. I still do not believe that for a second. I do believe he will come back in some way, shape or form, but that's an entirely different conversation. But I do feel like this is going to have far-reaching consequences for everybody else around Matt. And the thing is he can't put this back in the box again. Obviously Spider-Man managed it because he had Doctor Strange on hand, who could basically wipe the world's memories. But the thing is Matt does not have that, and Matt Murdock and Daredevil as a series is a lot more grounded in reality. It does happen in the comics where Matt's identity does get put back in the box again, but that was due to Kilgrave and him making a deal with Kilgrave, which I do not see happening this time round, because obviously Kilgrave is apparently dead again. Probably not. We'll see, obviously, now that Jess is back, so we'll see if he actually remains dead. But either way, I do not see the Netflix version or any live action version of Kilgrave actually helping Matt. So it's going to be interesting to see if they ever put this back into the box again, or if this is now just a new permanent status quo for Matt. In terms of comic book accuracy, I would say that this is sort of comic book accurate, but all of the changes that they have made to the Devil's Reign event kind of makes sense for the MCU. First of all, Fisk in the comics does not have an AVTF. He actually has his own Thunderbolts team that does his enforcement, and obviously they had to change that because that would have A, gotten confusing with the main movie Thunderbolts team, and B, they would have had to have brought in a whole load more superheroes, or supervillains I should say, and a lot of them just wouldn't be able to be in this because they are owned by Sony or whatever else. So it made sense to take out the Thunderbolts element and make it the AVTF. I will say that I do wish they'd been mentioned a little bit more, because obviously they are New York heroes, and that is actually my main criticism of this series, to be fair, is the fact that we did not get any other real mention of any other New York superhero, because in the original Devil's Reign event and the entire Chip Zdarsky run that this is based on was entirely populated with other superheroes. Spider-Man turns up multiple times throughout the run. You also get the Fantastic Four getting involved. The X-Men at points as well are also dragged into this. Bucky Barnes is as well, and a whole load of others all get dragged into this mess in the comics, and obviously that has not happened in the show. The only person who really got dragged into this is Jessica Jones, and at the end Luke Cage, and that was about it. And I do feel like this show could have had maybe a few more references in it to a few of the other characters. Obviously we had a very quick reference to Valentina, and we did also see Avengers Tower a few times in the New York skyline, but we did not get any other mention of them. Now, obviously, they couldn't actually mention Spider-Man because of Sony rights issues and all of the rest of it. I totally get that, but I do feel like there could have been maybe a passing comment or something about maybe the AVTF agents getting webbed up or something like this, or maybe hearing that maybe some AVTF agents were fighting an assassin or a guy with a metal arm or something like this. Just literally just a few little moments to maybe tie it into the larger MCU and to see the other New York heroes getting involved, even if we couldn't actually physically see them. And I feel like not having any of that really kind of detracted from it, because obviously this is based in New York where a whole load of heroes are, and the fact that we didn't get any kind of mention of them kind of detracted from it a little bit, because I do feel like a lot of them would have been involved. Obviously there are rights issues and actors are busy so they can't cameo, and obviously this is Daredevil's show and we do not want that being taken over or him being overshadowed by, say, the Thunderbolts turning up or anything else. But it would have been nice to maybe have a few references throughout here, just as the other heroes, so we know that they are actually fighting Fisk, or maybe are being stopped if they are the Thunderbolts, for example, who are controlled by Valentina. So I fully get it. I understand that they couldn't actually have them in there, but I do feel like maybe a couple of references would have really worked in here. What I will say though is that this show really did not skimp out on the comic book references. I won't go into all of them here because I have done full videos for that, which I will leave a link to up above as well as in the description, so you can check it out if you want to and see all of those Easter eggs. But what I will say is that I am glad that they kept mainly to the storylines that we know from the comics in terms of Devil's Reign, and then also Luke and Jessica being together and having Danny, and obviously right at the end there seeing that Jessica is still working at Alias Investigations, that kind of thing. So I will say it was sort of comic book accurate in the sort of larger sense in terms of character storylines and things like this, but they did change it a fair amount to fit it in with the MCU, which I don't really have that much of a problem with. Though I will say, like I said, I did want a few more cameos or at least mentions to tie this into the larger MCU. Then in terms of predictions and hopes for the new series, first of all, I am really hoping that we're going to see either Danny Rand or Elektra take over the role of Daredevil, because this has actually happened in the comics. Danny Rand did take over and become Daredevil while Matt was indisposed, and then Elektra did the same thing again when Matt was in jail. So I am hoping that maybe we see one of them take on that mantle. Obviously we know Danny Rand is back because Finn Jones has been seen on set with Mike Coulter and everybody else, so we know that he is back at the very least, but we don't know if he is maybe donning the suit or if he's just back to help out. We don't know, but I'm hoping that either him or Elektra will do that, but we shall see. I'd also love to see Luke taking over as mayor. Obviously, we already know that Sheila is going to be taking over for at least the moment because we see her in the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer as the mayor, but I would also love to see Luke taking on that role as well, like he does in the comics. I also reckon that the AVTF are going to be going after Matt while they are all in jail together. There is actually a moment in the Chip Zdarsky run where Matt is in jail as Daredevil and people are trying to take him out, so I would not be surprised if the AVTF are going to be trying to do that as well. Though in talking about the AVTF, I am not counting Cole North in here because, as we already seen, he is starting to turn against the AVTF, and I do think by the end of the series he is going to be more on Matt's side, exactly like he is in the comics, because specifically in the comics he is actually a detective who is very against Daredevil and vigilantes at the beginning, but in the end he ends up coming around to Matt's side and ending up helping him, and I do think we're going to be seeing that more throughout series 3. In terms of Dex going off with Mr. Charles, obviously we're going to know more about what Mr. Charles is doing via Luke, because he's probably going to be talking about it a little bit more, but I do think we're also going to be physically seeing it with Dex. I know a lot of people are thinking that he's going to be a part of the Thunderbolts, and personally for me, I do not think he should be a part of the Thunderbolts just because he doesn't really sort of fit in with the rest of them. Obviously he is an assassin who is trying to do better, but the rest of them kind of feel guilty for what they've done and they are actively trying to do better, whereas Dex is not exactly feeling that guilty is the only way I can describe it. And also Dex is very trigger happy, and once he decides that someone needs to die, he's just going to do it, whereas the rest of the bolts are trying not to kill people anymore. So I think they'd spend more time trying to stop him from killing people than getting anything else done, and I just don't think he'd fit in with the team that well. So I'm kind of hoping he's not going to be part of the Thunderbolts. What I could see happening with Dex though is maybe a Dark Avengers situation, because obviously Valentina has her Thunderbolts, the new Avengers, but at the same time she knows she can't actually control them because they own her now, so she's basically got no control over them and they're just going to do whatever the hell they want and not follow her orders. Whereas if she creates a second team, maybe of Dark Avengers, she may have a better time controlling them and getting them to do what she wants them to do. And obviously we know from the comics, when there is a Dark Avengers team, one of the members is actually Dex in the place of Hawkeye. So I could definitely see something like that happening with Dex with the help of Mr. Charles and whatever he is planning with Valentina throughout the next series. And then my final prediction is more of a hope, and that is that Matt is going to cameo in Spider-Man Brand New Day, because obviously he is now in jail and we know that there is going to be some kind of jailbreak within Spider-Man Brand New Day. We also know that the Hand are going to be involved, and Matt is not very far behind when the Hand is here, so I'm kind of hoping that he is going to cameo. I do not think he will be busted out of jail by Peter Parker or anybody else. I feel like he'd go more through the legal route, but I could definitely see him cameoing and helping Peter in that fight against all of the other villains who are trying to bust out of jail. Those are my thoughts and theories and everything else to do with Daredevil Born Again Series 2. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Comment down below, tell me what you thought of Series 2 and what you think is going to happen in Series 3. I would love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a devil emoji down below to let me know that you were here. I'll also leave a link as well down below to all of my social media if you want to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics. If you want to know even more about Daredevil and everybody else I have mentioned, all of that will be linked down below. Or if you just want to see any more of my videos where I'm going to be talking more about Marvel Comics and the MCU, please click subscribe. But until next time everyone, bye!